Why do you two keep showing up here?
Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip!
We opened this week with Kokoro running late getting home. On her way, she ran into Sunda-senpai, who was practicing Kislea's superhuman technique because last I checked, most humans were incapable of creating tornadoes outside of Kurosucho. Well, he's dead. I mean, they even did the whole shonen death scene as though this guy's name was Joe or something. Though unfortunately, we got the rest of this episode. Yeah, sorry if I'm a bit antsy throughout this review, but Toei is kind of on thin ice with me at the moment. Not that this episode wasn't already getting on my nerves, as not only did Sunda somehow survive that, but apparently he had been spinning like that 20,000 times, which I would hope was him just exaggerating. However, going by the general tone of this episode, I think they were serious. Also, did he just land on his freaking head there? Anyway, all of this was because he was trying to enter a particular contest. Chill, we're not there just yet. Apparently he had acquired his quote-unquote skills from his grandfather, who kind of reminds me of the dub for the grandfather from Beyblade, which I guess is kind of appropriate for this episode.
It's time we had a little rap session.
Not the birds and bees speech.
No, that's next week.
But yeah, while he was traveling the world, he had discovered the universal language of dance, which, okay, I can actually buy into that. Like, sure, it's one of those things that does sound silly on paper, but really, most forms of artistic expression, like dancing, can be appreciated universally and overcome language barriers. And for this old geezer, he believed that spin dancing was the ultimate form of communication, and yeah, do you already kind of see my biggest issue with the plot of this episode? They really tried to emphasize that just spinning around was somehow a contest-winning maneuver. Like, sure, it's a major part of ballet and breakdancing, which I think they tried to show the latter using some of those techniques, but overall, most of this training montage was just him spinning around like the Tasmanian devil. And yet, the Precure were totally behind this dude, and throughout the episode, acted as his cheerleaders, with Utan in particular just being reduced down to her catchphrase for most of this. As a result, it was just hard to get invested in this plot when Sunda seemingly wasn't getting any better by just spinning more and more like a freaking top. Just saying, if you only really have one move in your whole repertoire, then really you're no better than this.
What the hell is that?
Also, I would say take a shot every time they say Dancing Star, and it's not in reference to the main attraction of this episode, but I don't want to be responsible for anyone dying of alcohol poisoning or being unjustly fired. Like, seriously, I know I already brought this up, but it does bear repeating.
Banzai!
Anyway, Kokoro of course tried to encourage Sunda, and yeah, in hindsight, she really did make the right call in not joining his club, as she was already a much better dancer than he ever was, and hell, was even doing it in memory of her late father, rather than this idiot following in the footsteps of his wannabe hipster Gramps. Actual dance moves? Nah, of course, it was the common lesson of these sorts of episodes, where you gotta have fun, as your smile can be just as infectious. A fine enough moral that I do agree with to a certain degree. That said, again, it was just maddening that all we saw from this guy as well. With that, the day of the contest arrived, along with the main event of this episode, a cameo from the Dancing Star Precure making their animation debut, as these guys are from a stage show that we've actually talked about previously on this channel. Hell, we've even talked about their cast previously, such as Curelock's Ryo Takizawa, who previously played Dival Stomach, or Raiga Terasaka, who played the Gojuja version of Pater and Ichigo. Let's just move on before I get triggered again. Point is that this was a fun cameo that maybe we could talk a bit more about in the near future, hint hint. With that though, the contest that I swear must have been some sort of attempt at subliminal messaging with again how much they repeated it ad nauseum, started. As it turned out, the competitors were split up by grade years, likely so that Sunda wouldn't have to face the Dancing Stars, who are canonically high schoolers because, let's face it, they would trounce him. Then again, he wasn't in good form even before the contest, as he had lost his hat that he would need for his head spin. Hey dude, here's a crazy idea. Open your eyes! Thus, he was ideal to be a victim of the week, again. Yeah, for some odd reason, the Precure didn't point out that this is his second time, even though it would have been a really fun callback. With that though, the event hall was evacuated, except for all Precure in the building. Our main heroines engaged the monster, whose main attack, of course, was spinning, which was at least justified for a simplistic monster, rather than someone who was trying to enter an actual competition. Their attacks were ineffective against the power of the top spin, which was shown to us with some kind of needlessly well-animated Shohei Nishijima Sakuga, who really has gone far and above for this season. Same for BB, who gave us stuff like the Zukyun kiss sequence, as well as this. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, in spite of their flat voice acting, these dudes had a pretty awesome entrance. And with some help from their mascot, who could also take on human form because that's trendy these days, they were able to find the monster's weak spot and hit it with their pentagram kick, which is that okay to show in a kid's show? But yeah, the Dancing Stars pretty much did 90% of the work in this fight, which on the one hand, I'm glad they weren't like the perv in the mask, but still, it doesn't exactly make our main heroines look great when they're basically just on cleanup duty. With that, the contest continued in spite of the monster attack that should have turned this place into a crime scene, but when has that ever stopped these overly jaded civilians? Anyway, Sunda performed, and yeah, he did a little more than just spinning, but again, it would have really helped us to get invested in this plot point if we actually saw him do stuff besides practicing his spin. Thus, if anything, winning second place seemed way too high for this dude, but no, I guess we were supposed to sympathize with the fact that he was the runner-up to a very questionable stereotype. Yeah, needless to say, I really felt nothing for this ending, and I'm just glad it's over. This episode was just painful on multiple levels. Like, even put aside some of my admittedly external issues I have with the production company behind the show, this episode was just a slog to get through, with a poorly thought out plot that was likely more just a vehicle for the cameos. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think the cameo was actually pretty well done, and maybe even the best part of this episode, though really, that also kind of highlights how underwhelming everything else was. This, unfortunately, was yet another episode written by the series director Chiaki Kon, who again proves why she needs to stick with what she's actually good at, in directing, not writing. Granted, it's hard to say how much of this episode's shortcomings were her fault, as I think they were just required to make an episode that will allow the Dancing Star Precure to cameo, but even then, the plot here is just so random and incoherent that it's hard to get invested. Not only were Sunda's dancing skills just ridiculous with how he could generate tornadoes as though he was a certain red android from DC Comics, but they were also somehow unimpressive as actual dancing, with him just spinning and doing nothing really else. If they really wanted us to get invested in his conflict, they really should have shown him take some actual strides in improving his skills, like maybe joining in on some of Kokoro's dances, which would have had the added benefit of highlighting their connections, rather than just indulging in his bizarre obsession with becoming the most ungraceful ballerina ever. But no, let's just reduce our superheroines down to being cheerleaders for most of the episode, both for Sunda and hell, even the Dancing Star Precure. Now again, no real shade towards these boys, as they were pretty fun cameos, and now that they have achieved actual animated form, it would be kind of interesting to see an anime spin-off, or even a cameo in the next crossover film. There's just some good possibilities for these boys that they could really expand on, certainly way more than this idiot, who overall really brought down this episode with his miserable excuse of a plot. While the actual Dancing Stars were pretty enjoyable, the only things Raygun Jr. here is making spin are my eyes all the way to the back of my head. Thanks for watching your weekly reminder of why the idol industry should never be glorified. Not gonna lie, I'm not anticipating the remainder of this season, and am way more looking forward to stuff like Princession, and maybe even that thing that they were pushing hard in this episode. Still, look forward to Princession Orchestra next, as well as maybe some other projects. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and don't worry Dorothy, I got him! There, that should keep him out for the next few months.